When I think about why I taught what I taught, it really comes from some deep roots. My parents were not well educated. My mother was an 8th grade dropout. And I really had a sensitivity for what it was like to not have access to learning. And had some experiences in high school that suggested that a lot of people weren't getting a real good chance to speak their mind, to have their voice heard, or get access. And I was fortunate to be able to take advantage of some government support. And actually, the government really helped me navigate the school system well relative to financial aid in college and then getting my PhD with some government support. So to me, teaching is always about trying to give people a voice, paying attention to access, trying to find a way to inspire people to believe that they can maximize the talents they have. Well, teaching to me is really about inspiring people to believe more about themselves, to believe they can be more than they thought they could become. And I remember Howard Bruner was a great teacher who mentored me to really learn how to inspire people. I think about Bob Richburg was probably the best teacher I ever saw, who could get kids to think critically and get graduate students to think about how to solve problems through really a sense of thinking beyond what they knew and integrating concepts. And then one of my mentors, Richard Bowles, who wrote What Color's Your Parachute, early on taught me about the use of metaphors and color and finding a way to get people to see things differently because of the way he could conceptualize. I've tried to define the notion of a career really through a sense of life roles, that we're all trying to seek a sense of identity in who we are. And when I can help, especially counselors who I train predominantly, to think about a career really as life roles, we all really played a family role, a community role, an avocational role, and certainly a vocational role. And when we organize our thinking and our life around the notion of career development, we really have a sense of who we are beyond just our job title, because most jobs aren't big enough anymore to allow people to meet all their needs. My own philosophy of life is really to live large and to live fully without regret. And to me, that started by being a parent, and that's the most important role I play. So when I talked about careers for people and talking about how to counsel people, we all need to think about kind of the role we play as parents for sure. And how do we live fully, and how do we get a sense of meaning from the work and learning we do? Because I don't think you can separate learning, work, and play today. Most people in jobs that are really in any attempt trying to self-actualize themselves can't separate learning, work, and play. I mean, just think about nobody quits at 5 today, and your internet access is everywhere, and your email is on all the time, and your phone rings often. So my own philosophy about life is really living large without regret, trying to find a balance, making sure I pay a lot of attention to my family, and thinking about the kind of community role I play. Yeah, my own roots come from a place without a lot of books, and my parents didn't have a formal education, and I've been able to travel the world, frankly, and work in some developing countries. And I also recognize some of the challenges you see around the world you see in our own hometown. To me, poverty is such a devastating issue, and it's difficult to think about having a life today without good access to learning. And learning and education are the only way we can find a way out of poverty. So for me, when I think about what's happening in the bifurcated income structure, the bifurcated access system of who gets to get a good education, a lot of my work was driven around how do we pay attention and give people a voice so they can have a sense of social justice and access things that allow them to be great citizens, great parents, and have a life of meaning. Yeah, access to learning in some ways today is driven by where you live and how much money you make. And in terms of working with students, I'd help them hopefully to see that not everyone would go to school. I was a real advocate to question other ways for people to creatively learn. And we did something called the Career Development Institute to immerse our counselors out into the workplace to see the different levels of work. Many of our students have come from the service or retail industry or humanistic psychology background, probably knew little about business, didn't spend a lot of time with economics, and hadn't really had a vast array of experiences. And when I can help our counselors and students get out and see the workplace and understand the trade-offs people make to excel, and the inability sometimes to get ahead without education, that really, I think, brought the issue together about why is it people succeed, who gets ahead, who gets access, and how do we help all people be economically self-supportive. Yeah, CSU has been great to me. They've given me so many opportunities to, frankly, see the world. I think of them, I've taken 4 full sabbaticals, and that allowed me to go to Asia, to visit China, Korea, Thailand, to spend time in Africa, to have a chance to work for NASA, to do remarkable things that I think allowed me to be a better teacher by bringing back larger context to my classroom. So CSU has been giving me gifts since day one, and my work overseas, my work on sabbaticals, my work with NASA, all those things I think made me a better teacher, hopefully. Well, there's so many great stories when you get to travel the world, and CSU gave me the keys to that opportunity. But I certainly think a critical experience was being detained in Sudan right during the time Tom Sutherland was held over there in Lebanon. So we were detained there, and they took our video equipment. We were making a film on famine and starvation relief. And for me, it brought back the whole cause of how do people, frankly, survive, and how do you distribute wealth, and how do you find a way for people to just find meaning in a life that's often very impoverished. And those issues really never left some of my own values and what I believe about the world. My work at NASA was a whole lot about how do we help identify high talent? How do we get people interested in STEM? How do we pay attention to the things that really create invention and allow us to be innovative and entrepreneurial? And how do we find a way for the government to maximize its best resources by incentivizing companies to utilize the technology the government only has created? I had worked briefly in the Office of Civil Rights, which a long time ago taught me about the opportunities women didn't have. And then when the whole issue of where's our economy going, you heard people percolating ideas about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And we were fortunately some of the early writers to talk about that and the importance of counselors and their gatekeeping role. If we don't help young people and people who are resource poor access science and math and technology and engineering classes, we really lose the depth and breadth of people and talent in this country. We have to find ways to succeed. And NASA was really bringing me in to talk about how do we help counselors be better advisors to allow people to know about STEM opportunities, because we needed a greater balance of people who understood to be a good citizen you had to understand science, that math is really the basis of all science, that we need math and science and engineering and technology to create and invent so this country can move forward both in terms of invention but also in a global economic workplace. In 1983, I had the privilege to study with a guy named Richard Bowles. Wrote the book, What Calls Your Parachute, one of the top 25 books of all times that changed American culture. And it allowed me to think about the metaphor of a flower. And he teaches that, to take a look at if you know yourself and really spend time on reflection and self-discovery, how do you then incorporate that in your lifestyle? And his book is frankly brilliant. He's a remarkably talented, conceptual guy, a great artist. And I was fortunate to be followed up 25 years later, and my flower was then published in the book every year since, because it's an annual book. And I got to write a part of that book in a small way to talk about how important it was to my life. When we allow people to self-discover and find ways to connect with opportunities, they're going to frankly have a very nourished life and opportunities well beyond their expectations. And Richard Bowles really helped me live so much of my life by planning and believing in career development. He's a giant in my eyes. You know, I was hired by CSU to teach, and at the time was the Department of Vocational Education, then it became the School of Occupational Educational Studies, and then it became the School of Education. But I always felt, first and foremost, I was a CSU employee. And what I loved about CSU is they let me, frankly, run with what I wanted to study, research what I wanted to study, but also be on committees in a larger sense, in a university level. And I love that, because I really wanted to be a contextual guy. So when I think of CSU in my role, I think of myself often sitting on the wonderful benches around campus and just watching students walk by, because they represent so many different places in the world, they represent so many goals in life, and they represent so many majors on campus. So while I was in the School of Education, I really had this sense of my best place was sitting on a bench overlooking the campus, because I loved CSU and it gave me so many ways to participate at levels beyond just teaching, research, and service, because I could serve the community on campus as well. I was very fortunate to be able to retire relatively young from CSU and leave there, but hopefully keep my office and my ability to give back. But I could see opportunities that were growing rapidly. I presently work for an organization that's serving 36 million people and trying to find a way to give career development to a larger population. Secondly, I'm interested in helping an organization develop a whole new assessment program and tie together through social media a career development program that'll be used in a longitudinal way for generally people 17 to 27. So what I learned at CSU and the opportunities CSU gave me, I'm now able to take out to in a larger community. And that's certainly invigorating, and my learning curve is remarkable, and the people I'm working with are filled with young, very bright, technologically savvy people. So I'm still learning, and I still love the idea that I can combine what I learned at CSU and hopefully reach some larger audiences outside in the kind of work I'm able to do today. Yeah, well, I was really lucky. The work I got to do at CSU happened because of some other people, for sure, and I can think about Nat Keys is probably the best skills teacher in America when it comes to training counselors, and Lori Carlson's the #1 advocate for school counselors and helping talk about social justice within that context. And Sharon Anderson is remarkable in her ability to appreciate ethics and really changed our whole field in many ways. In our department as well, talking about ethics. And I'm delighted that Jackie Pila-Schuster is teaching some of the classes that we both love so much, and she has a remarkable sensitivity to aging and the strengths movement and some of those issues. On campus, I think about Jen Long in the College of Business Career Management program, one of our recent grads who's stellar. So I see all kinds of people on campus that continue to do great things and things I believe in, and I'm hopeful in some ways I was able to encourage them a little bit. I frankly went to work every day and said, I can't believe they pay me. I woke up wanting to run to work. I loved what I got to do because I got to study people and how they as individuals were critically important to understand their interpersonal self, but also how they fit into the system. And learning and work is part of the system we need to survive today. So I'm thrilled that I got to do that every day. And when I think about some of my graduates, Joe Gronsky is one of the best principals in America, and some of the counselor educators around America that have done some of the things we've tried to suggest are helpful. I'm really hopeful all people see that career development really gives you a map, it gives you encouragement, it allows you to find hope, it gives you structure to allow you to frankly navigate and make choices that allow you to be all you want to be. It's tough to be a professor today in a new kind of way. I mean, faculty, I think, have to come to grips with they no longer own content. Content is really everywhere, and students can get it in real time, probably with video support at any place they want. So faculty, I think, have to rethink their role. If they're trying to disseminate information and pour it into someone's head, they're really going to struggle, because most of us won't listen more than 18 minutes anyway, as TED Talks has taught us. So for me, it's a lot about how do I inspire, how do I use ways to engage people, how do I facilitate discussion, how do I curate, how do I find the best resources to bring into class so I can curate an experience. And that might mean that they have to watch a video before they come to class. That might mean they have to work in a team differently and bring in questions that we really grab on and talk about in the class itself. We may do some assessments or some field work and bring it to class. Because if I'm going to lecture, I'm probably not using my time very well. I think I'm a fairly high performance kind of inspirational teacher, but they can also see that on film. And they also can see people who are teaching me that I'm scanning and reading about every day on film. Every book I can talk about is on book TV. So faculty roles really have to shift. In addition, there's no question that at a great school like CSU that's driven by land-grant values, you've got to do research. And doing research is critical. And I think identifying your research agenda and doing something longitudinal is something I wish I had done. I wish I had taken my 30-some years and collected data earlier and followed it along the line, but I didn't do that. So for new faculty, I'd say get clear on the metrics, know what you're accountable for, be driven by things that you believe in, and passionately, I think you can find a way to connect what's good for you and what's good for the university. Because certainly higher education is going to go through remarkable changes and funding is rapidly changing. In my eyes, in many ways, faculty have to think about bringing their own salary anymore. We're at a time where government's not going to be able to support the things that we once got used to. I think tenure is certainly radically changing. I think putting together a portfolio professoriate career is probably the way to go. And I always believe that if I wasn't consulting, I probably wasn't really testing my mettle. Because when you go out in the field and test your ideas, you have consumers and practitioners giving you feedback and making you think differently and suggesting maybe your theoretical model isn't working as well. Because often we think theory leads practice. Really, practice determines what theory becomes. You know, while at CSU, I was lucky. Tex Anderson actually hired me and believed in me and gave me tons of room to run, and I'll always appreciate that from him. And you know, Ellie Guilfoyle and Nancy Hartley were remarkable deans that I think, again, gave me tickets to go places and dream about what I wanted to dream. So I felt they were remarkably helpful. I was always impressed by Joe Daly. Joe Daly not only was the foundation of our program for the middle parts of my career, but he was leading the school board. I mean, this gentleman was a giant in this town and was very humble and never took credit. I was so impressed with what that meant. Dwayne Blake is a remarkable man who recruited me to come here, and I'm so grateful that he saw a young guy, I was pretty young at the time, coming from Massachusetts, could add something to the field. I appreciated that. And my most grateful experience probably was working with Joe Vassos. Joe was able to interview me one time and then take some ideas and help me understand how media could push ideas out. And Joe is a remarkable videographer who really gave me tremendous opportunities to package some ideas and hopefully get them out to the larger world. Some of our efforts have reached, fortunately, lots of people, and we're grateful for how media and the use of technology advanced that cause. If anybody new to this field, I would say, when you come to CSU, get to know as many people as you can on campus, cross disciplines, understand different colleges, because we live in a remarkable, what I call informal college. My college became those people I worked with, and I learned through committee work what they did, or I served on their committees across disciplines, or went to folks for lunch and said, help me understand this concept. I think of how many times I went to lunch with people in psychology, human development, and learned from them what was going on. I think about my work, frankly, in athletics and student affairs, and how that helped me better understand the culture and about engagement of students, and what were the kind of cultural shifts going on in young people's minds. So to me, I would say to anyone looking at coming to CSU as a young faculty member or wherever they might work, get to know as many people as you can, because they become your informal college. And in my case, I was lucky because of the support from Nancy and Ellie and Tex and others. I got to travel the world and be involved professionally across the gamut in professional associations to connect with some of the best minds. So my college was also off campus a lot because they became my best teachers, and then I hopefully brought that back into the things that I wrote or researched or tried to teach. You know, I have to admit, every time I look at Tony Frank, I just said, wow, I got to work at a university that somebody really understood what land grant means. Land grant to me was all about giving access to getting out throughout the state, testing your ideas, taking what we know to be working in the labs out to the community. And land grant was a whole lot about, frankly, social justice and allowing people like Rich Feller to get an education because his parents might not have had one, or allowing him to get support through laboratories, internships, or financial aid, and maybe a scholarship that someone would support because they believed he was a good investment, that he would return what we taught him, and I hope to think I've done that a few times over. Land grant to me is all about the best of a democracy, and when to think we've just celebrated 150 years is a great story because it gets back to really where we came from. A land grant, frankly, is helping all of us be better citizens, and I'm thrilled to have been part of that in a small way. My mother had an 8th grade education, and I remember the day that the school counselor said to my sister, she said, you better go to college, you'll be a scrub woman like your mother. And then I became a school counselor, and then I became one who trained counselors, because I always felt that wasn't what I needed to hear. My mother was a brilliant woman with remarkable work ethic and great character. My sister's a remarkable lady who may not have gotten to go to school like I did because of when she was born. But to me, it's all about giving people a voice and allowing them to believe they can be more than they think they can become and maximize their talents. We need the best out of everybody, and as I think about an aging society, as I now work for an organization looking at that, we've got to get people to be life reimagined, think about the possibilities in front of them. Where else can they go? Age shouldn't determine what we become.